Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Garner, joined with my co-host, Tom Woods, and this is kind of our slightly belated, unofficial Halloween review. We were discussing which films we wanted to do. We wanted to do one of our favourite horror films. Last year we did our top 10 countdown on our favourite horror movies, so we know we couldn't do anything like that. So this year we kind of just wanted to do a film, and we settled on The Fly. For me, what kind of sparked this was that Jeremy Jahns did a review on this a couple of weeks ago, I think, saying that it was a film he watched way back when, and he had no idea why, but he was kind of compelled to watch it again, and he did a review on it, and that kind of sparked in my mind that, yeah, I'm kind of the same. I think I watched this movie when I was about 10 or 11, loved it, and I really haven't gone back to it, so I thought I really need to rectify this problem. So that's why I ultimately decided on watching this. But this is the David Cronenberg remake slash reimagining from 1986, starring Jeff Goldblum, Geena Davis, and John Getz. And I actually think this is one of your favourite horror films as well, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah. No, I've loved this film sort of ever since I sort of started watching movies analytically, because David Cronenberg is probably one of the best filmmakers in the business, and he does craft really concise, sort of simple stories, but they have deeper meanings and sort of the use of body horror as well. He's absolutely fantastic at that.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at his other films as well, Videodrome, for example, Scanners, he really does like playing on those themes of like infection and just really gross out, disgusting bodily changes. Not to say he hasn't done other stuff as well. He's made films like History of Violence as well, which is a fantastic film. Good. Very different from his other works. But The Fly is actually his most commercially successful film of his career. It was done on a budget of between 9 and 15 million, and it made 60.6 million at the box office. So, yeah, a lot of people like this movie, especially on release. It was kind of critical acclaim, and you can absolutely see why. I should also say as well that I have gone down with a bit of a cold, so apologies if you're noticing my voice is a little weaker than usual, anything like that. And also I'm not on my new microphone, so hopefully that doesn't deter too much from the review itself. But I think we should... Well, first off, I just want to start with the poster on this thing, which we don't really do with a lot of movie reviews on this. We don't really usually talk about the poster, but The Fly has one of my all-time favourite movie posters of all time. It's very simple, but it's so effective, and also classic like movie taglines: "Be afraid, be very afraid," which is quoted in the movie as well. But it does kind of play on that classic sort of like old style horror movie. I mean, the original movie from 1958 is a film I haven't seen. I've seen scenes from it, and it does look very cheesy, but I'm sure when it came out at the time it would have been very shocking. And that actually spawned 2 sequels as well. Have you seen the original, or have you just kind of seen the Cronenberg one?
My first introduction to The Fly was the Cronenberg one. I've not gone back and watched the original. The original's sort of... I will at some point watch it, but it's not something that really interests me at this particular time. I know that's sort of a bit odd to say, but I should sort of learn everything I can about sort of one of my favourite horror films through its original and see the differences. But yeah, it's just something I've not gone back to watch yet.
Yeah, and I think if I'm going to compare this movie to any, for me, another great horror sort of remake is John Carpenter's The Thing. And I think there are a lot of comparisons between the two movies, so I think these would make an absolute great double feature. But like that movie, I haven't watched the original. And I think it's a case of that we always talk about horror remakes and how they're never as good, but The Fly and The Thing are 2 movies that really are held up as examples against that, where they can be done right, where they can be done in a different way. I'm not even sure I'd call them remakes. They are almost reimaginings. They're not beat for beat the same. They take the story in new directions. They do different things with the characters, which I can respect. And I mean, both have, in my opinion, the greatest use of practical effects in film history. And watching this film again, I knew they were good when I watched it as a kid. Watching it now in 2016, by God, these effects still hold up. We'll talk much more about the effects later on, because in the credits, that team does get top billing as soon as the credits hit, which quite rightfully so, in my opinion. But we'll start off with our cast. Relatively small cast in this one. It is a very self-contained movie right from the opening scene. This film really doesn't waste any time. We get the sense it's Jeff Goldblum at this kind of science fair thing with Geena Davis, who's a journalist, who approaches him right from the opening scene. He says he's made something that's going to change the world, and that sort of like carries through all the way through the film and ends on a very downbeat note. I'm guessing we're going to go into spoilers at some point with this movie. Yeah. It's very hard not to, especially considering it's such an old film. But the plot on IMDb has it: a brilliant but eccentric scientist begins to transform into a giant man/fly hybrid after one of his experiments goes horribly wrong. It's always the classic way, isn't it? Just science goes wrong. Don't become a scientist, essentially. But I have to say, we're living in a year where movies like Independence Day Resurgence can get made. And Jeff Goldblum has become kind of a self-parody of himself, I would say. Jeff Goldblum isms, for example, in his acting are prevalent in all the adverts he's in and all sort of like the recent movies he's been in. But in this is, in my opinion, is his best performance of his entire career. He absolutely embodies the role of Seth Brundle, and all the little twitches that he has as part of his natural self when he acts work really well for the character, and especially when he's transforming. Especially acting under all that makeup as well. I mean, God knows how many hours this guy was in makeup. Goldblum's just fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to your sort of self-parody point, I kind of think of Jeff Goldblum as the new Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
In the fact that, you know, he did this really good thing, or the mannerisms he portrayed in earlier works have now sort of become a staple of his, and sort of it's all we really know him for now. But this is probably one of his best performances. I would agree, and I actually think it's a much more subdued Jeff Goldblum performance, mainly because it's not as in your face as sort of his later works, which I think probably he went on to develop a more in-your-face sort of style of Jeff Goldblum acting. But yeah, it is very good, and the supporting cast are excellent in it. And you do say it's a really small cast, and I think having sort of really likeable protagonist in Jeff Goldblum in the centre sort of really cements the dynamic between the three leads, or one of the main leads, and sort of the others tag along, I guess. But it is Jeff Goldblum's sort of crowning performance, and one you actually think of whenever you think of Jeff Goldblum. You either think Jurassic Park, Independence Day,
not the sequel, not the sequel,
or The Fly. Or actually, no, I'd even go one step further to say Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And actually, that's something that's a point I wanted to raise as well, is because this came out in 1986, and the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978, the Philip Kaufman directed movie. I think it does take a bit of inspiration from that as well. The idea that you know you're transforming into something you don't quite know what it is, and there's some unknown force sort of inside you that is making you do really strange things. I do think it takes inspiration from that as well, and from other earlier works of horror. But no, definitely. So that's kind of a rambly bit.
No, that's all right.
But it is the centerpiece of Jeff Goldblum really works, and I think it is one of his more subdued performances, and probably one of his best.
Yeah, and I mean, with his performance as well, it's absolutely imperative that you feel for this guy and that you have sympathy for him. Because it is watching it again, I was surprised by how gradual the change is. I mean, we really don't see the fully fledged fly creature until the finale, like the last 10 minutes or so. Before then, the makeup is very sort of staggered out and gradual, and I think that really works to the film's benefit, because at the forefront you want this romance between Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis to be the crux of the film and the emotional centre of the film, and I think it absolutely is. Watching it again, though, when the romance first starts off, it does seem like Geena Davis's character is kind of like a creature of opportunity. She's come into contact with this very successful scientist and sees this project he's working on, and it almost seems like she's with him for ulterior motives to further her story. But really, as the film develops, you do get a sense that she genuinely does care about him all the way through, especially... There's that heartbreaking scene where she goes to... I think he sends her away at first when he kind of has that increase in sexual potency, and he's trying to force her into the teleportation device, almost like a born-again type thing.
Yeah.
And then we fast forward where he calls her up and he says, okay, come and see me, I have got much worse, I want to talk. And he kind of shambles out on two crutches, he can barely walk, he almost looks kind of leprous. And it's that disgusting scene where we first see how he now has to digest food, and he kind of like throws up all this bile out of his mouth. And, you know, she just hugs him and she just breaks down in tears and says, like, I can't come back here, I hate to see what you've become. And I actually think this is one of Geena Davis's best performances as well. I haven't seen her in a whole lot, mostly kind of the Stuart Little films, I have to be honest. But I thought she's great. I mean, you need both of your leads to be fantastic in this movie, and every time they share screen time, because she has a lot to do as well. It's not just Jeff Goldblum's film. She goes through that whole pregnancy scare in the movie, where we get that great, just horrific dream sequence where she kind of gives birth to this cocoon.
Oh, yeah.
Like this fly, like it's just writhing, and it's, the practical effects in this film are fantastic. And ultimately, her storyline culminates into that final moment of the film. I'll get your impressions on Geena Davis first, because I did actually find that there was an alternate ending to this movie.
Oh, really?
Or a couple of alternate endings, which would have definitely left us with a much different impact than what the film actually does. But I thought Geena Davis was great. And quite honestly, I could have seen Jeff Goldblum or Geena Davis be nominated for some kind of Academy Award for their performance in this film. I thought they were great.
I happen to agree. I think apart from those dreadful, Stuart Little movies, where they're actually. Did you know there were 3 Stuart Little movies? I've only just found that out.
I did. The third one is an animated one.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know why they did that.
But she's a really good actor. She's been in projects like Tootsie and Beetlejuice for a start.
Beetlejuice, of course, yeah. I completely forgot that one. I've seen Beetlejuice. One
of my personal favourites, Thelma and Louise, as well.
Yeah.
And, she is a quality character actor. I think she really does give a sense of realism to an otherwise, I wouldn't like to say sort of, two-dimensional at the start, because, like you said, there is sort of ulterior motives to her character. But as the film progresses, you do get a sense that she has come to care for Jeff Goldblum's character in the film. And I think she does play that quite well at the start. Seems a bit. I'd hate to use the word conniving, but
yeah,
like that's something I reserve for Littlefinger and Littlefinger only. But like there is some ulterior motive there, and. I think she does play that quite well, where you're not really sure if she actually cares about him or if she just wants more for her story. But it is a very good performance and a very subtle performance, I think, as well. And I think that's a strength of David Cronenberg, is he does get actors to not necessarily be bombastic, but be subdued, so you get more emotion out of the film as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not a weak performance, but going up against Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis, I think the character that really doesn't get as much of that subtlety is the character of Stathis Borans, played by John Getz. his character just kind of seemed really uneven to me. When we get introduced to him, he's the kind of jealous ex-boyfriend. He's really kind of obnoxious. There's that moment where they're in the store together, and he's just really just taking the mick out of that she's having this relationship with Jeff Goldblum, and he just seems really unlikable as a character. But then kind of halfway through the movie, he suddenly becomes really supportive of her. He goes with her when she says she wants an abortion, when she's pregnant with Jeff Goldblum's baby in there. And ultimately, by the end, he kind of becomes the hero figure. He's the one that saves the day, ultimately.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was that gradual sense that we suddenly have to like his character. It seemed a bit uneven to me. It's really not a criticism of the movie. In fact, that's kind of just me nitpicking, because it really doesn't deter from the movie at all. I just think when you've got that relatively small cast, there's always going to be one weak link, and next to Goldblum and Davis, I think that John Getz' character probably wasn't fleshed out as much.
No, I would agree with that as well. I must say he does sort of portray pain really well.
Yes,
and in one of the most more disgusting, I personally think, than the bile coming out of Jeff Goldblum's mouth is spoilers as well.
We've already gone into spoilers. They know by now.
It's where John gets his legs, and they just melt from all this acid, and it's really disgusting. And the genuine sense of pain is really prevalent, and it's really fantastic. He almost
passes out from it, doesn't he? And I think that's a good enough segue than any other to start talking about the effects on this movie.
Oh yeah.
If this got a remake now, this would clearly all be CGI. And what's so good about this movie, and most films from the 80s, is the level of practical effects. I know that if people are a long-time viewer on this channel, they're sick to death of me just rambling about this and ranting about it, but it really is the case. Practical effects do really trump CGI, when you can do it with practical effects. And just the level of gross out in this movie, the body horror, it's all absolutely testament to the work of Chris Wallace, who came up with the makeup effects, along with is it Stefan Dupree? I can't pronounce his name. Probably butchering that pronunciation.
Either and or.
But both shared in an Academy Award win for this movie. They are top billed as soon as the credits hit. So clearly Cronenberg knew that the entire film rested on making those designs believable. Yeah. And, with a lot of practical effects in films, it doesn't always go as planned. For example, the finished fly creature in this movie, it really was very temperamental. It was kind of like the shark from Jaws, how they only had to selectively shoot it or shoot a small portion of it. But to me, that kind of works, even in the ending. Like, you'll just get a shot of the legs walking across the floor, or you'll just get a shot of the upper torso. You never really get a complete shot of the whole thing, I don't think, maybe only in a few brief shots. But that works because it's scarier when you don't see it all, and your imagination lets you make up parts of it and everything like that. Even just the effects on the slow transformation, a scene that always makes me kind of cringe and like turn away, is where his fingernails are coming off in the mirror, or his teeth, and he's like storing all his own body parts in the bathroom mirror because he wants it to be like a museum one day. When it's such a great film with the effects in there. And it's also, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know you probably want to talk about the effects as well, but watching it this second time, the real disturbing change in Seth Brundle's sort of perception of himself, and how initially he's very scared of what he's becoming, and then he kind of embraces it and says, like, I'm going to be the next best thing, this is going to win me the Nobel Prize, look at what I'm turning into. And even when all these horrific things are happening, like his ears are falling off, fingernails, teeth, pulling skin off, pulling body parts out of his own skin, it's really disturbing to watch, and it's really heartbreaking to watch when you see how his perception has shifted into this really kind of twisted and demented outlook on what he's becoming.
Yeah, no, I that's something I'll agree with. Talking about the effects, I actually want to go back to your remake point.
Yeah,
because I think if this was going to be remade, what would happen is that it would go the way of the Thing remake, or prequel, as it were, where they'd have all these really cool-looking practical effects, but then it'd just get butchered by the studio in post with heaps and heaps of CGI that doesn't really make the monster that scary. That's the way I'd imagine it would go.
And nowadays, I think it's cheaper, isn't it, to just use digital effects than it is to build all practical.
Not too sure about that, but that's something to research.
Yeah.
But I just sort of want to what was I going to say? Oh yes, about your point about the monster. You don't see much of it, which is really, really good, because you don't see much of the monster, and it's kind of that alien sort of effect where if you see too much of it, you'll just realise, oh, it's a guy in a rubber suit.
Yeah.
But the fact that you don't see much of the fully fledged fly creature really does make it that much more terrifying. And I think it's sort of it was a staple of all these early horror movies of the 70s and 80s, where less is more. Whereas now it's become more is more. No, more is. I don't know where I'm going with this, but
yeah, no, I know.
You
I completely
kind of get
what you mean.
What I mean.
Yeah, and that's not to say that modern day we don't have good horror films, but I definitely think the 80s did hit their stride with horror films, especially with movies like this, with the sort of like gore effects and the really iconic horror imagery. What else can I talk about? Oh, I want to talk about one of the deleted scenes from this movie, and I said I'd talk about the alternate ending as well. There's a scene in the movie which I really wish had been left in the film, and I don't know if it has been put back in subsequent home video releases or whatnot, but there's a scene which takes place sort of the midway point of the movie where Brundle's experimenting with the whole gene splicing thing and the fusion, which sort of like gives him the idea for the finale where he wants to fuse with Geena Davis, pregnant Geena Davis, and himself. And it's a scene where he takes a baboon and a cat and he fuses them together in this horrific, monstrous apparition of nature. And it's great practical effects work. It's really just unpleasant though, and it kind of escapes and it attacks him, and the creature itself is freaking out, and he takes like a metal pole and he beats it to death once he realises what he's created. And he kind of escapes onto the rooftop, and then this like claw thing like bursts out of his side, and he rips it off and like bites it off in a really gruesome body horror fashion. And I don't know if he recalls that in a scene in the theatrical cut where he says something grew out the side of me today. I'm not quite sure what it is. But this was the setup for that scene, I think, and it's a really great scene. You can find it on YouTube. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long. As I say, I don't know if that got put back in the cut, but that just shows more of the great practical effects work in it. And the alternate ending was something very, very different. So we both know how the film ends. The final shot of the movie ends on a very sort of depressing and heartbreaking note.
Yeah.
The original ending was that Geena Davis is back with John Getz's character, and she has a dream where she gives birth to this cocoon-like creature again, and it sort of like breaks out of it, and it's a baby with butterfly wings, and it flies out the window and into the sky. Very, very weird, bizarre, and I think you can either find video or just like pictures of this, but I think that would have given a very, very different ending. And I think the reason they pulled this ending was because they just got over the heartbreaking demise of the Seth Brundle character, and now all of a sudden it's like she's back with her old boss. She doesn't really care about Seth Brundle, clearly, because she's just now with John Getz's character, and I think just the imagery of like a baby with butterfly wings is just like really kind of different and just pointless to the actual film. I like where it ends. It ends on a very stark and bleak note, but that's kind of what the film is. That's kind of what it becomes. So that's just like the natural end point for me. You don't really need any more. As I said, the film doesn't waste any time. It doesn't waste a single frame of the film, in my opinion, and I think it was the perfect place to end it where it does.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And sort of you say that the I kind of know what they're going for in that ending, but would it have worked? No. No. Life from death or some something bizarre like that. Would it have worked?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And plus, it's not physically like they're two completely different creatures, butterflies and flies. So
Yeah, I was going to say if it had kind of fly-like wings, maybe, but I think you would need a whole lot more time to fully develop that idea, so it wasn't just kind of as random as just showing that at the end. Really quickly, before we talk about music and kind of round out, I did want to talk about the whole pregnancy aspect of the story. Watching it again, this was a scene I didn't remember, but it's sort of like the last spark of humanity in the Brundle character. And it's where he overhears that she's going to have an abortion, and he takes her away. And it's quite a heartbreaking scene where he's like, please don't kill the only part of me that's left.
Yeah.
Please have this child. And, she clearly doesn't want to because she knows what the child's going to turn out like. She's really, really scared. But I thought that was a really nice... And that's what's great about horror movies like this, where you do have all the very shocking body horror and gore and violence and everything like that, but this is a very emotional story. It's an emotional love story, and it's a very believable one, especially when you have a conversation like this, which does feel very human, even when he's becoming something completely different, something completely just separated from humanity. He still does retain that, even when he's in kind of the final stage before he becomes the Fly. God, I love this movie.
Yeah.
I love this movie so much. We'll talk about the music as well, because actually I was really, really shocked when it came up in the opening credits that Howard Shore did the music. We all know Howard Shore, most famous for doing the music to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. He's done a few other films as well, mostly kind of horror and thriller films, such as Silence of the Lambs and Seven. I love the score to this movie, hearing it again. It's very kind of dramatic and almost like operatic in its nature. I was watching a retrospective saying that most horror films in the 80s did have like a kind of keyboard synth soundtrack, and this kind of took it back to old style with the full orchestra, and I think it completely works for the film. Really ramps up, especially in scenes like the arm wrestling scene, which is very, very gruesome to watch. And it really just does play up on the drama of the film. And that's what a good soundtrack should do.
Yeah, it should. And sort of what I think the soundtrack does is sort of bring a sense of wonder and amazement initially when he's first discovering what he can do as the Fly, but then sort of transforms into this warped, sort of disgusting sound as he heads actually into fully fledged Fly form, and I actually quite like that. And it's a sense of, it sort of gives you a sense of amazement that he's stronger, and that arm wrestling scene, just wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, no, I really like the score as well. And I actually completely forgot that Howard Shore even composed music for this, or subsequently films like Seven and Silence of the Lambs. It is just what on top of one of the best film scores ever made. He can create all these really amazing pieces of horror thriller works as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've pretty much said everything I can on this. I will say as well that The Fly 2, which came out in 1989, and it was directed actually by Chris Wallace, who was the chief makeup effect designer on the first Fly film. I remember liking that movie. Again, I only watched that when I was probably about 10 or 11. I remember I did a double bill of The Fly and The Fly 2 back to back. And whilst, don't get me wrong, it nowhere comes close to what this version of The Fly does, David Cronenberg's The Fly. But I remember it being a very enjoyable film, and as sequels go, I didn't think it was that bad. I think it's based on the child of Geena Davis's character, isn't it? I think. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that one, I think, and I'd actually quite like to see the 1950s movie as well.
It's got one of the most horrendously awful moments of just sheer terror in it, where it's the dog that they've spliced, his sort of only friend that they've spliced, and he's transformed into this horrible monster that he goes and feeds. It's disgusting.
And I'm guessing it still uses a lot of practical effects
Oh,
in
yeah.
that
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. Oh, I might have to watch that tonight, actually, because I'm kind of on a fly kick right now. But yeah, I think I've pretty much said everything I can. Sort of recommendation, if you haven't seen this movie, definitely check it out. It's on a lot of top tens of horror movie lists, quite rightly so. If you love body horror, if you love practical effects in movies, chances are you've probably already seen this movie. But if you haven't, definitely watch it. It's probably one of the best horror films I've ever seen, and I loved revisiting this movie. I absolutely loved going back to it. Yeah, check it out.
I would say check it out, yeah, because it's absolutely fantastic.
And check out Cronenberg's other works as well, because he is a fantastic director. A lot of great projects out there. I do think this is one of his best, though. I'd probably hold this as his best. But yeah, so that'll do it for our review on The Fly. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie, any of other Cronenberg's work, anything like that. Please do drop us a comment and hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to keep updated with all of our content. A lot more movie reviews and reactions to come. A lot of stuff happening with the channel. So yeah, please do stay in touch with all that stuff. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.